Welcome back to Fullerton College Pre-Press, Print 75 and 77. This is your instructor, Ben Hewitt, and that subtle crunching sound in the background is my dogs enjoying their kibble. Anyways, let's take on here. We are doing PIA 3.1, and this is video 2. We're talking about the pre-press workflow and what it takes to get a print job from idea to production. So we're talking about salespeople now. Salespeople. Sorry, I'm not making fun of them. If there's ever a job I was ill-suited for, this is it right here, as told by the numbers of people in my classes. Anyways, they are an important part of the process. Sometimes this can be a specific person who does sales. Sometimes it could be, as I've been talking about other things, just another hat that another employee, or in some cases, owner wears. At my last job, we only had one salesman, and that was the owner slash manager of our little tiny print shop. There were only 5 of us, so owner, manager, salesman was one person. Customer service scheduler estimator was a second person. Pre-press, graphic design, and output technician and press operator, that was me. There was dedicated bindery only, and then there was also bindery slash driver, and that was all of us. There were 4 of us. Once in a while, they had a 5th person on to do some website work. Anyways, let's go from here. So we're talking about the salespeople. And all I was trying to say is sometimes the salesperson also does other things. Sometimes all they do is sales. Typically they drive to the ad agency and they'll review the job with the designer. They'll often help figuring out the quotation of how much it's going to cost to print. My experience, some salespeople are very loyal and do a very good job, and some seem to be in a bit of a loose orbit around your company. In the same way that there are celestial bodies in our solar system, somewhere in the Kuiper Belt, outside Pluto, really, really far from the sun, which may or may not be orbiting our sun. That's how I feel about outside sales. You're never quite sure if they're actually a part of your company or not, or if they're just selling a thing or two of yours on the side while they go around and do something else that's their real job. You never really know. You know, do they have a family in another city? Do they have another wife and kids? Who knows? Sorry. I'm getting a little too silly. Moving on. It's important that your salespeople understand printing. If you're good at printing and good at sales, getting into print sales is not a bad place to be because you're necessary. The last thing you want is someone who doesn't understand what you do trying to sell it, because if they don't understand it, I find that not understanding something is the first step on the road to not valuing it enough. Not understanding the process and not understanding all the things that go into a print job is a good way to think, print is cheap, whatever, I'll just sell it for whatever, and not giving good quotes. Also, if you don't understand the process, how are you going to communicate to the customer a reasonable expectation of what they're going to receive and when they're going to receive it? You can start making promises. I mean, it's very easy to go out there and lie and just tell people, oh yeah, sure, it'll be ready this afternoon, whatever, great, we'll give it to you whenever you want. Yeah, no problem, cool, yeah, we'll give you a discount, cool, I'll take my cut in this commission, and we're good and done. But if your team of production people can't meet up with that, if those were unrealistic promises, you can get away with that once. Sometimes the more generous, more forgiving clients will come back and give you another chance. Sometimes they're gone after one of those. You really have to treat people well if you want them to stick around. So it's important to understand what it is you're selling in sales. Yes, selling is a skill, but part of that skill is understanding the subject you're trying to communicate. Anyways, a lot of times they work for a commission of the job, which is they'll take a percentage of the total price of what they sold, and that'll be what they take home as their pay rather than getting a normal paycheck. Another reason I would be terrified to get into sales. Estimators. This is sometimes a job and sometimes just a task that someone else performs. This is a person who takes the details of what the salesperson has been communicating with the client and says, yes, this is how much it's going to cost. Here's how many people hours it's going to take to make it. Here's how many machine hours it's going to take to make it. Here's how much ink. Here's how much paper, yada, yada, yada. Here's the time frame and the price. That's their job. Come up with what they think it's going to cost. Of course, they're estimates for a reason, because the real world always seems to come in and add some extra level of, well, you weren't expecting that, were you? To make things go a little bit longer and a little bit more pricey. But in general, you try to get somewhere within around 10% of what the final price would be. And generally speaking, among the industry, there's about a 10% agreement of we're going to be accurate to this, but you know, it may go over, it may go under. There's no really telling. Again, they try to keep within this percent. No, five. I'm sorry, I said 10. I meant five. About 5% of the final cost is what you're going for. Also, 5 or 10% of the time, sometimes different parts can be malleable, different parts can be firm, depending on who you're working with. Also, author alterations increase the price of a job. This is something I could give an entire hour-long lecture on, but I will try to keep it short and simple and sweet for you guys right now, because you don't need a very long talk on this, but it is important. This is where a lot of time gets invested into a job before it ever reaches pre-press or before it ever reaches press. Author alterations. Um, to me, I know this as client meddling. They send you a perfectly good print job that they're ready to go going with, or you've been working on a design with them, it's ready to go. But then they call you back and, oh, I think we could add more pop to it, more pizzazz. I think we need better something or other. Let's make this bigger. Can you make the logo bigger? I might have to give you guys a video of a great little song on that, by the way. Make the logo bigger. Yeah, that real estate, that empty space on the page that you left negative space so people could actually read the words. Let's fill that with more logos. Or sometimes they're just honestly making changes because they came to you before they were ready. In fact, I think that about sums it up. When a client comes to a designer before they're really ready, the designer gets to live with their indecision and their changes, and that can cost time, money, and energy. Ideally, it's not built into, it's accounted for as you'll pay more if we have to make extra changes. My dad, who's been in printing far longer than I, always joked that you could totally make a print shop where you give print away for free. You don't charge any money for printing. You just run presses and give people their postcards or whatever it is they're ordering without asking for any money at all, except when they want to make changes. You'd be the most profitable print shop in the world if you only charged rush fees and author alteration charges. Wow. Anyways, then you have the customer service, the CS representative, the CSR, because there weren't enough TLAs in this industry to begin with. The CSR is vital. The CSR is there to communicate with clients and help them understand what their print job is and help them, in some cases, deal with it. In other cases, help them get what they need. They also help move the job along in the print shop and make sure it goes to the right places at the right times. My friend Michael, who works for a computer game company, his thought of the customer service is it's their job to stand between the artist and the client. Because the last thing you ever wanted to allow is for a client to have direct access to the creative team. That never ends well. It either ends with fights or more often it ends with a long protracted job with author alterations that go on and on and on. Because there's a sense of power when you start working with a creative team where you decide, hey, I like seeing them make alterations and changes. I think I'm an idea person. I know I'll come up with great ideas and they'll make them happen. And that turns into very, very long, drawn out jobs. So in some cases, it's the CSR's job to get in the way of that happening. They also deal with the paperwork and keep track of jobs, and they organize the system to make sure that jobs are searchable, findable, retrievable, and repeatable. They are vital. Even in my tiny little shop where we only had 4 employees, including the owner working, one of those was a dedicated CSR. And I really enjoyed working with her. Pat was great. She really whipped us into shape. She kept us all on schedule, helped organize it. Between me and her, we figured out a way of organizing the print jobs better than they had in the past. And we made that shop very profitable by keeping it efficient and running on schedule. But anyways, they also communicate with the designer and the customer, the details of the job. They help them understand how long things are going to take. And if things go wrong, sometimes it's their job to give them the bad news. The Department of Print regrets to inform you, yada, yada, yada. Scheduler, this oftentimes gets blended into CSR jobs, but not always. The scheduler looks at figuring out how much press and bindery time and design time is necessary to produce everything the shop is doing. They figure out when and in what order to run the jobs on the presses to make sure everything gets done on the schedules that they've been asked to be done on. This is not as straightforward as you think. Sometimes big jobs need to be done quickly and you can just run them straight through. But other times it's the scheduler's job to make sure that even though you're running a really big long print job of 1,000,000 books, you still need to squeeze that 100,000 postcards through on that press in the same week that they're being done and figure out how to do the dance to make sure that this can happen. and figuring out how many people need to work overtime and how much work has to be done to keep on schedule and get everything done. And in some cases, they need to figure out and help understand with clients, among all your clients, which clients is it okay to come late to if you need to, and which ones need to be on time. Who just wants to send out a general advertisement, and who has a trade show next week? Big questions. Anyways, scheduling is an important job. Sometimes it's done by management, sometimes it's done by a dedicated scheduler. Depends on how big the print shop is. We're going to break here and come back to another video in a minute. This may be one of our longer lectures. Thank you for bearing with me.